Me again. Happy Friday night. I hope you're doing something fun and fabulous and are not watching this right now. But if you are, congratulations. There's nothing more fabulous than this. Yay! As a lead-in to another podcast that Coach Sarah and I are going to be recording on Tuesday, back by popular demand, thank you for all the kind things y'all have said about my husband, is Mr. MK out slimming. And he wanted to, well, I wanted him to tell a story. And then once again, I thank you for this. But you told me something interesting earlier that I had never considered before. And according to Facebook, we've been friends for 13 years, 12 years. It's a long, 12 years, it's a long time. Granted, I avoided you for 2 of them, but whatever. You're here.
3.5, but whatever.
We figured it out. Who's counting? Mm-hmm. So the story I wanted you to tell first is give us the background on how you ended up in your role, how you knew that you kind of had found your place in oil and gas.
Oh, well, so first time coming out of business school, I was a fat guy. Ended up randomly getting staffed in an oil and gas company, and I was walking around the executive suite, and so there's a lot of industries and a lot of places where you don't see a lot of big guys in leadership positions. And I spent a bunch of time walking around both the partners and then just walking around oilfield services companies and oil companies, and there's a lot of really big, very round gentlemen who make it into executive leadership positions in oil and gas companies, probably because, well, statistically speaking, it's still a very male-dominated leadership culture, probably more so than many other industries. But also, for reasons I don't quite understand, the oil and gas does not look down or have the same type of predispositions about fat guys that other industries do. So I was like, no, I look around, I see executives look like me. Yeah, it's probably going to be a good industry.
Which is that's the first point I wanted to underscore. When we talk about privilege these days, and I'm certainly talking about privilege a lot, I recognize what I have, but I also, in the same breath, will acknowledge that privilege is not a trump card. It does not invalidate all struggles. So it's one thing when you hear white men in this day and age complain about, or cisgendered heterosexual white men specifically, complaining about how it's harder to get ahead than ever before. At the same time, that unless you're a fat white man, like this world is still nasty towards fat people. It is possible to be cisgendered, heterosexual, white, privileged, and still not fit in certain spaces due to size. And this is why in the fitness protection program, the company that I founded in the podcast, the topics that we're exploring are these intersections to where your body image, how others perceive your body, can impact your intellect. There's an article in the show notes that will be in the show notes of this upcoming podcast about the lack of fat women in the C-suite and how much harder it is to get ahead if you are talented and a woman and a person of color and fat, and how rare it is that you can still be fat and be seen as competent in a variety of industries. So I had never really thought, when you mentioned that, I had never thought of that before, like, wow, I have walked into rooms and assumed I wouldn't fit because of my gender or because I wasn't from the country that I was living in. That is what's called thin privilege that I've never really had to consider in a normal environment how I would be perceived due to my size. And that is sort of a moment. But the other story I was hoping you would tell was about the one time you did successfully lose weight. You alluded to a couple of live streams ago, thank you for all that you've done now, to the time when we spoke about your weight and my desire for you to make some changes. And weight was the easiest one to talk about at that point in time. Okay. And your reply was something akin to, the only time I've ever done this successfully was, you gave this story of living in San Francisco and said, I don't have the time that I did back then. Would you mind talking about your weight loss journey while you were living in San Francisco?
Sure. So finished business school, 2009, not a great time to finish business school. Got my offer to join the company I was going to join deferred like 11 months. So it was like May, and they're like, we wanted you to start in June, but now we want you to start next March. And so I went out to San Francisco for a lot of interesting reasons, kind of threw some stuff in the car and went there. And at that time, just decided to try and live healthy. And, since I'm like, I got nothing but time on my hands, I had kind of gotten a scare earlier in the year, which was the first time a doctor had ever forced me to go on blood pressure medication, which really kind of freaked me out and was an acknowledgement of reality that I wasn't really ready for. And so essentially I stopped drinking, went back on I remembered my episode from college, so was like, all right, so we're going to be more controlled about this time and be more conscious of your needs. But I went on the 1,200 calorie a day, kind of now we had apps, so now I had an app to track it. And essentially I got to San Francisco, I rented a little room in Japantown. It was like a monk's room. Had nothing but a few bags, and all I did was sleep like 11 hours a day. I'd wake up at 6 in the morning. I'd get like a little breakfast. I was biking around San Francisco, which has hills, as you know, so that was my primary method of transportation. So get that. I got a few pieces of contract work, so I literally just grab breakfast, go to a coffee shop from 7:30 a.m. until 11 a.m. I would be in the coffee shop doing work for my contract gig, and then at 11:30 I would get back on my bike and go to the gym on Polk Street, which there's this old gym in Polk Street, San Francisco, that has a very nice. It's like in an old theater, so all the machines are like around watching TV, and I would work out for like 4 hours. Usually spend like 90 minutes, 2 hours on the elliptical machine, and then do calisthenics, and then do weights and kettlebelling and all sorts of stuff. I got really into kettlebelling that summer, and so discovered all the fun stuff you can do with kettlebells in very little space. So basically, through a combination of kettlebelling and like spending like it finally like I was like spending like 2.5 hours on the elliptical, because I'm like, wow, if I can spend 2 hours on the elliptical, I can spend 2.5 hours. What the heck? And then so after working out for like 4 hours, I would go get like a small meal that would get my, kind of 2 meals a day. So I didn't really eat lunch because I didn't want to eat right before workouts. And then I wasn't drinking at that time, and just literally would drink a lot of water, bike back up over the hill over to Japantown from Russian Hill. And then I would go to bed at like, I don't know, 9 o'clock in my monk-like room because there was nothing to do. And all I could drink was water. So it's like, well, I'm tired. I worked out for 4 hours, and then I go to sleep. And I'd sleep 10 or 11 hours. And I repeated that process for somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 to 4 months, and achieved my lowest weights pretty much in my adult life after the military, which I remember exactly what the weight was and exactly when I achieved it. And did that for 4 months. And so, so when I had, was working 2-3 hours a day and had 4 hours to work out and could sleep 11 hours a night and wasn't drinking and could survive doing that on 1,200 calories a day, losing weight is easy. So there you go.
And that is what kills me and angers me all at the same time. That what you might not have noticed or might not have thought about what was happening at the same time was a TV show called The Biggest Loser. And I hate that show. And it's getting a reboot. And I've got a lot to say about it, and that's what we're going to be talking about on Tuesday. It is not okay or normal to spend that much time working out, but we live in a culture that celebrates it. It's not okay to work until you vomit. That's a problem. That's not something to be celebrated. And that is exactly what The Biggest Loser celebrated, or would imply that if you weren't ready to vomit, then you could have gone harder and therefore were lazy. It's a terrible mindset that I'm still having to combat in adults of intellectual levels way higher than mine that have been shamed into thinking there's something wrong with them because they've not yet achieved some sort of ideal thrown out by producers who behind the scenes were feeding all kinds of nasty drugs to contestants to keep them up longer, let them work harder, and lose a little more weight because it made for really great TV. Super dramatic.
Or like the Marine Corps, where in Marine Corps training, the drill instructors would often say, you started vomiting in the Marine Corps on a run, they'd be like, what's that coming out of your mouth? Is that weakness leaving the body?
I don't have any patience for that sort of nonsense. You'll never hear that being done in any of my programs. So with that in mind, get ready for the next fun, fantastic episode. There'll probably be a lot of cursing of the Fitness Protection Podcast. I'm never going to tell you what to feel or how to deal, but I'm going to take a look at the forces that make people feel this way. It's not okay. And we're probably going to end up talking a whole lot about that Weight Watchers app for children. Yeah, Weight Watchers just released an app for children to track calorie counts.
Right.
And sorry, I'm sure somebody what uses Weight Watchers is going to come defend it at me. It's wrong. It's a terrible idea. Terrible idea. You're scaring children at this point. Children that are taught to use apps turn into grown-ups who think the only way they can lose weight is to restrict to 1,200 calories, use an app to help keep it down there, and then work out 5 to 6 hours a day. It's disordered thinking. It is pervasive in our culture, and that's what we're talking about when we refer to diet culture. Brain Fire of the Vanities is the series that explores and hopefully exposes diet culture, and we can't wait to continue that exploration with you, because even when you have thin privilege, this stuff falls on the people we love. It falls on everyone around you. Your size should not ever negate your competence. Your coach, your love. Let's win at the weekend. And I'm going to try to ramp down so we can watch Rocket Man.
Okay.